The first part, we got onto the chairs. The second part, do we look really weirdly green? Does it look really strange?
It's a bit eerie, isn't it?
It's like what I used to do at Halloween, which was hold the green flashlight under the chin and terrify the children.
Well, there are children in the audience, so let's not do that tonight. So I do want to thank you for being here. And a few people have commented to me that Margaret Atwood, this great literary giant, and A Rocha, this small Christian environmental organization, that's sort of strange bedfellows. So my first question for you is, why did you say yes to this event?
You're in my book. Yes, as Lorna said, you are the real embodiment of the people in the middle MaddAddam book who are trying to combine faith and nature and science, and they're doing it on through rooftops where they're growing all their organic vegetables. Now, you're not doing it on a rooftop, but I bet you could. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're really...
Our roofs are a bit steep, so we'd have to...
Your roofs are steep. Well, the rooftops, they're doing it on our flat, but so they are a group. They're a little bit more bizarre than you, I have to say.
I think so. There were times, though, reading Year of the Flood, where I did laugh out loud at some of the similarities, like the recycled art projects with the kids groups. We do that.
Well, and so you should. I'm not against it. It's very creative. And also it is, you know, you're using things that otherwise would just be thrown out. So they're very big on that.
That's right.
Yes.
So my next question is more personal. I'm sure many of us are familiar with that quote from Rachel Carson, where she talks about that if a child's to keep their inborn sense of wonder, they need at least one adult to travel with them, accompany them, and rediscover over and over again that sense of wonder. So I'm wondering, in your own life and childhood, who were those people for you who helped you discover wonder in the natural world?
Well, we were just in the natural world. So my dad was a forest entomologist of the old school of biologists, by which I mean still very much into hands-on observation and narrative. You know, any life form has a story. So biology is partly the telling of stories. And he was very much like that. And because we were up in the woods, that means no theater, no running water, no flush toilets, no electricity, no television, no movies, no school.
Sounds like heaven.
Well, so you were telling me about, you know, what's going on at A Rocha in the educational area, and it's pretty similar in that the kids are outside a lot, and we now know that children learn better when they're learning, first of all, something they want to know about, and second, in an outdoor environment. Being put in a concrete box is really not a small child, and being made to sit still all day is really not a small child's idea of how they want to spend the time, honestly. So we were just, the rule in our house when we were doing schoolwork was that as soon as you got it done, you could go outside.
Okay.
So, of course, that made me a superficial, very rapid person.
So you spent a lot of time outside.
Yes, go outside. And I had an older brother who then later became a biologist, and one of his favorite activities was turning over logs. I spent a lot of time turning over logs because you never knew what might be underneath them.
Right. That's wonderful.
So I think it's much the same as writing novels, as far as I can tell. It's much the same thing.
That's right.
So I grew up with all of these things because we had to have a garden. There were no stores, shops. We ate a lot of. I have to tell you, Spam is quite good in the woods when you are cooking it over a frying pan, over a wood fire.
Right.
That's the goodness of Spam is brought out that way, not necessarily in any other location, but
right. Just where there are no stores.
Yes, and the vegetables came from the garden,
right,
which was built on a platform of sand. And this is a glacial scrape area, it's granite, pockets of sand. But luckily there was a logging camp within boating distance. We went everywhere by boats, there weren't roads. So my parents went to this old logging camp and brought back the heavenly thing that all gardeners long for, which is some well-rotted manure. Mm-hmm. You know the virtues of that. And they dug it into the sand, and therefore we had a vegetable garden.
Wow. So you come by your convictions honestly.
Yeah, I would say that I was, I think one of my bad moments was when I unfortunately was weeding the garden, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't do it on purpose. I uprooted my dad's experimental Jerusalem artichokes.
Whoops. So going back to the MaddAddam series and this religious sect that you created, the God's Gardeners, why did you choose that literary device? Why not just some biologists and ecologists banding together?
I don't think it's a literary device. I think it's a description of reality. Because I don't put anything into these kinds of books of mine that I write that are about, quotes, the future. Of course, there isn't really any the future. There are a number of possible futures. There isn't anything set in stone. It's going to be partly how we behave that will determine that. And these tendencies are already with us, and they were already there when I was writing the books, because I follow with great interest, for instance, the division between dominionists and creation cure stewardship people. And I think you said to me, do you know about the Green Bible? And I said, do I know about the Green Bible? Of course I know about the Green Bible. I have one. So these things were already there, and I just took them a bit further. You know, I added mushrooms.
And bees.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing bees already, and there is an urban beekeeping movement, as you know, and a lot of people are putting their beehives on roofs. Yeah. There's actually
this hotel has some, actually.
This
hotel.
Several hotels have them. The Canadian Opera Company in Toronto has bees on its roof. They often do quite well in cities, as long as there are enough flower gardens about, because cities that have banned pesticides, of course, are quite a lot healthier for them. So we also, we lived on a farm, Graham and I lived on a farm for 10 years, and encounters with bees were part of that. Right. Were they not? Graham?
He's not paying attention.
No, so I just, he's remembering. Yes, on one occasion he got stung by some of them, and he really looked quite a lot like Mao Zedong for quite a while. It's quite frightening. So we did all of that, and I think you're going to see the world of faith reconnecting even more than it has already with the realization that the natural world is part of that. A number of other religions never lost that connection, and it was there in Christianity for a long time. I think it was the 18th century that divided, maybe some to a certain extent the 17th, but I think really the 18th. And now I think it's reconnecting. The 20th century was not the earlier part of it was not the best time for the realization that animals have a valid being. You know, that the biological world is essential to us. I put this very simply when I'm talking to people about it, which is that if we kill the ocean, we will die, because the oxygen that we breathe is largely produced there. Right. So it's true that everything is connected, and you prove that every time you breathe in and out.
So going back to the God's Gardeners, in the book they have this whole liturgical
I gave them I felt they should have a liturgy.
Yeah, and a church calendar almost. And they have hymns. You actually sent me a CD of the hymns, put to music by a composer, Orville
Stober. Yes.
And my favorite hymn is the Mole Day song. So I'm wondering if you could sing the Mole Day song for us.
I'm so rarely asked to sing. I'm almost never asked to sing.
But you do have your opera premiering tomorrow,
I do,
so I thought...
Happily for the audience, I am not performing in it.
Which is why I think you need to sing it now.
Well, now or never. I said to Orville when he was composing this music, this has to be real hymn music. That is, hymns are there for people to sing, so they have to be singable by people like me, not just by people like you, Orville. Of the melodious voice. So this is the one of them that I can sing, because it is a children's festival. It's the festival of underground life, and most of the things that live underground are quite small. So the Mole Day Festival is a children's festival. So now we are going to hear what the God's Gardeners Buds and Blooms Choir would sing. We praise the tiny perfect moles. You're right, you are kind of atonal, aren't you? I wanted Leah to do a duet with me, but she discouraged that idea.
I said no way.
We praise the tiny perfect moles that garden underground. Boom, boom. The ant, the worm, the nematode, wherever they are found. Boom, boom. They live their whole lives in the dark, unseen by human sight. The earth is like the air to them, their day is like our night. They turn the soil and till it, they make the plants to thrive. The earth would be a desert if they were not alive. Boom, 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 boom. The little carrion beetles that seek unlikely places return our husks to elements and tidy up our spaces. And so for God's small creatures beneath the field and wood, let us today give joyful thanks, for God has found them good. Let us today give joyful thanks, for God has found them. I don't think I have never, ever been asked for an encore before. Yes, I think you're taking this compassion business just a little bit too far.
We are Christians. It's one of our values.
Very, very forgiving.
So I have a serious question now. You have spoken and written about how we are and become the stories that we tell. And I wonder if you could speak to the stories that you see, sort of the larger stories in our society that you think are environmentally dangerous. And then following up from that, Are there stories that you think need to be told or should be told?
Whoa, that's quite that's quite a mouthful. What is environmentally dangerous? Well, I think the most environmentally dangerous idea is the idea that human beings live over there somewhere and everything else is over here. And that everything else is just there for the convenience of, as it usually turns out, certain kinds of people. So that, I went to see the Noah movie. I don't know how many of you have gone to see the Noah movie, but it's pretty interesting because one of the things he's doing in it is talking about the opposition between dominionists who think that it's all just for whatever you want to do with it, and stewardship people who feel that it's there to be cared for and cherished, and that it's a responsibility. So those are two different kinds of stories, and one is going to be more dangerous, let us just say, to human existence than the other one. So those are a couple of kinds of stories. The kinds of stories that probably need to be told, or that it would be hopeful and helpful to have told. Some of those stories concern unsuspected interrelations in the biological world. For instance, I just learned one that I hadn't known about before at all. The leatherback turtles, what do they eat? Well, what they eat is primarily jellyfish. And what do jellyfish eat? Well, what they eat is primarily fish eggs. So if you remove all the leatherback turtles, you're going to have an excess of jellyfish and a real decline, which we've already had, a serious decline in fish populations. That kind of story is pretty interesting. But the other kind of story, and this isn't a pitch for your book really, but it kind of is.
Go for it.
is stories about people who have worked with dedication, perseverance, and faith, because that it's one of my beliefs that we're not going to be able to pull this off. By pulling it off, I mean getting the human race through the bottleneck without an element of faith. You don't save things unless you love them, and also you don't work with perseverance and dedication against great odds out of simply rational motives. And that's not how human beings behave. I just read the galleys of a pretty interesting book. This will surprise a lot of you. The book is by E.O. Wilson, very noted biologist. It's called The Meaning of Human Existence. What he means by meaning is not necessarily what you might mean by meaning. But the thing that will surprise you is that he doesn't put science at the center of the human enterprise. He puts what we might broadly call, what I will call the narrative impulse, and what other people might call the arts, other people might call religion, other people might call the humanities, but that whole complex, he puts that at the center. He says that is what makes us truly human, and that is what is inexhaustibly human. So science is a way of describing the world that can only describe through measurable observation. It really cannot say anything else about anything outside that sphere. And he, a scientist, does not put that at the center. Some people are going to be quite surprised by that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm going to be very unpopular, but I'm getting a signal from the back that our time is up. Isn't that tragic? I'm so sorry. But I have one more question.
You're not going to join me in song?
No.
Rats.
I've seen in in a documentary about one of your launch of the Year of the Flood that you invited the audience to take a pledge. So I was wondering, as your final act on stage tonight, if you could lead us in some sort of pledge.
All right, my pledge has to do with an activity that we can all take, an act that we can all take that is beneficial to bird life. Because I did my launch of Year of the Flood partly as a bird conservation awareness launch, which caused, in England, one woman came up to me and she said, "We're so excited, our robins are full." I said, "What?" Turned out that they'd been collecting money in hollow robins. That's what that was about. Our robins are full. But the pledge I'm going to ask you to take has to do with drinking only shade-grown coffee. Because if you drink only shade-grown coffee, and any coffee that's Arabica is shade-grown, you're helping to preserve the canopy of forests that are otherwise cut down. So if you drink only shade-grown, you're encouraging the preservation of forests, tropical, subtropical forests. If you can then manage to drink fair trade, organic and shade-grown, you get extra points. But at the very basic level, if you drink only Arabica and not Robusta, then that is the pledge I want you to take. So what form shall we put this in?
Raise your left hand, right hand?
Right. Let's raise the right hand and pledge only to drink Arabica shade-grown coffee. Well done. Some of you didn't raise your hands. Let's see them. All right, so wasn't that easy? You're sort of instant virtue.
Thank you very much, Margaret Atwood.